All right, let's get right into this one. Today, we have a raw, first-hand account from inside a facility the survivor calls Black Site Berlin. And this isn't a story about healing. It's a story about survival. We're starting at a point that should have been a step toward freedom, a transfer out of the crisis ward.
A year and a half. I mean, think about that. A year and a half on a crisis ward is an eternity. So you think getting transferred to a so-called normal ward would be a huge relief, right? A light at the end of the tunnel. But for him, this move to Ward 7A, it wasn't a reprieve. It was the start of a whole new kind of nightmare.
So picture this. He's put in a 3-person room, a small, confined space. And that room is about to become a 24/7 assault on every single one of his senses. This is where he meets the two people who would come to define this new chapter of his torment. And right away, you can see just how insane this situation was. On one side, you have the Indian fan, a man with a deeply disturbing past, carrying serious infectious diseases, and, frankly, no concept of hygiene. And on the other side, the Messi, a hoarder who never showered and kept rotting food in his cabinet. And our survivor is stuck literally right in the middle of it all.
So what was daily life like? Well, it wasn't just one thing. It was everything, all at once. Imagine 3 TVs blasting nonstop. There was no quiet. Ever. The air was thick with the stench of rotting food from one guy's cabinet and the foul odor from the other's uncleaned intestinal outlet. This was the same roommate who would smear his own feces on the bathroom walls to protest the very conditions he was creating. The irony is just staggering.
But this went way beyond just bad smells and noise. This is where it gets genuinely dangerous. The survivor describes this nightly ritual where the Indian fan would clean his stoma right there in the room, leaving a huge blood stain behind. And then, and this is the craziest part, he'd do it without washing his hands and just touch everything, all over the room. It got so bad the staff had to start wearing latex gloves just to walk in the door. And there was literally no escape. At one point, this sudden, unbelievably foul smell just hits the room. He asks what it is, and the Messi just casually says, "Oh, nothing. I just took off my shoes." These were plastic shoes he wore 24/7, even when he slept. The smell was so overpowering, the survivor had to order him to put them back on and never take them off in the room again.
You know, this wasn't just about living in filth. The tension, the constant arguments, it all boiled over into direct, terrifying threats. The Indian fan knew exactly what diseases he was carrying, and he started to use them as a weapon, threatening the survivor in his sleep. And let's be crystal clear about how serious this was. We're talking about AIDS. It's caused by HIV, it destroys the immune system, and it's passed through blood. So when this guy threatened to drip his infected blood into the survivor's mouth while he was sleeping, that wasn't just a threat, that was a death threat, period. And that's not all. The roommate also had hepatitis C, another serious blood-borne virus that attacks the liver and can cause cancer. So just imagine trying to sleep just feet away from someone who is actively threatening you with not one, but 2 potentially deadly diseases. The psychological pressure is just unimaginable. Now, this feeling of pure desperation, it wasn't just our survivor who felt it. The story of another patient, a guy named Rain, really shows you what people were willing to do to get out, and just how impossible it really was. So Rain sees an opportunity during a group bike ride and just bolts. He ends up living homeless in a local park. And then, you can't even make this stuff up, a fox steals one of his shoes while he's sleeping. So he's chasing this fox through the park trying to get his shoe back. After 10 days, broke, hungry, with nothing left, he just walks back to the facility and turns himself in. It just goes to show you, for these people, there was no real way out. Not on the inside and not on the outside either. Okay, so after 6 months of that hell, 6 long months, he finally gets moved to a new room. You're thinking anything has to be better than that, right? Well, that feeling of relief, it lasted for about 5 seconds. I mean, can you even imagine? He walks into his new room, his supposed fresh start, and who's standing there? The exact same guy he knew as a potential rapist from his time back on the crisis ward. Just unbelievable. Any sense of safety he might have hoped for was gone in an instant.
So what do you do? How do you even live in that situation? Well, they made a kind of silent pact. We don't talk about the past. But the survivor was always on edge, literally sleeping with one eye open. The roommate did end up finding a new, consensual partner, which was a small relief. But his mind was still in a strange place. He developed this new psychosis, where he was absolutely convinced that people were passing gas at him from all the way down the long hallways.
And all of this just makes you wonder, how does anyone survive in a place like this? What kind of mental armor do you have to build just to make it from morning to night without completely losing it?
Well, here's a pretty wild example, and it has this weird, dark humor twist. Our guy had just recently quit smoking. And where does he end up? Trapped in a room with two guys who are basically human chimneys, chain-smoking constantly. But here's the kicker. Instead of making him relapse, the constant, choking cloud of smoke made him so sick of it, it cured him of any desire to smoke for good. The most effective anti-smoking program ever, courtesy of his own personal hell.
And that brings us to maybe the single most telling story in this entire account. One of the new roommates used a big tobacco tin for everything, an ashtray, a storage bin for old butts, and because of this, it was always smoldering, like its own little toxic furnace, stinking up the room with the smell of burning plastic filters.
So, one day, the potential rapist roommate has had enough of this smoldering can. But he doesn't use water to put it out. Oh no. He just picks up the whole disgusting, burning tin, ash, cigarette butts, all of it, and dumps the entire contents right into the other roommate's fresh, hot cup of coffee.
And what happens next? This is the part that really shows you what this place does to a person's soul. The guy whose coffee was just turned into a liquid ashtray, he doesn't even blink. He doesn't say a word. He just picks it up and drinks it. The whole thing, ash, butts, and all, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. He was so numb, so completely desensitized by his reality that he didn't even notice.
So there's no big dramatic escape, no moment of justice. The account just leaves us with that chilling image of a man so broken he doesn't even notice he's drinking ashes. And it forces us to ask this really tough question. In a place that's supposed to heal you, but instead becomes a daily battle for survival, where do you find the will to keep going? And maybe more importantly, what's left of you when it's all over?